Hey everybody, welcome back to American History with Mr. Finn. Today we got a lot to talk about. We're just gonna fast forward here. We did get the Emancipation Proclamation and the freeing of the slaves, and the war had become a stalemate to the Civil War. It was kind of bogged down, the North and the South, no one was winning. Eventually, Lincoln is going to settle on General Ulysses S. Grant. And we talked about Grant a little bit. Let me just put Grant's name up here. Grant becomes the general, the overall general, the leader of the Union Army, because he would get things done, he would keep pressing. And he had an idea that basically Lincoln said, hey, this guy really doesn't give up. He always goes for it, always tries. That's the kind of tenacity that I need. That's the type of attitude I need. Always going after them. So, Grant's idea, he poses to Lincoln, is the idea of total war. In total war, the definition of total war is you are at war with all of your enemy. What does that mean, at war with all of your enemy? Well, it means we're destroying everything. We will, capture towns, burn down houses, burn down crops, destroy telegraph lines, railroad tracks, terrorize everything. That is the idea of total war. We are not just fighting battles, but we are going to come and just destroy everything, totally destroy everything. That's why it's total war. And Grant says, here's the deal. I'm going to chase Robert E. Lee. Chase him. He goes over there, that's where I'm going. He goes over here, that's where I'm going. And I will continue to fight him. At the same time that I'm doing that, I'm going to send General Sherman, who is working under Ulysses S. Grant, to the south to conduct total war, meaning exactly what I said, destroy everything. So basically like a war of terror against your enemy. So think about it really that's what it would be, like a war of terror. Like if you heard Sherman was coming, you were scared. Because he would basically, and this is not very pretty, this isn't like a nice way of looking at war. It's not honorable really in any sense, but Sherman would say, hey everyone, take it easy when we go destroy this town. But then he would just kind of like, okay, I said it, and then he'd walk away and be like, and then all these soldiers would just do whatever they wanted. They would rob and plunder and steal, in some cases rape people that were, like women that were there. Like it was really an ugly situation where basically Sherman would just say like, go ahead, and he could say, hey, I told him to be gentleman and nice and whatever, but then they would immediately go into a house and be like, look at all this nice, silverware. Like this is made out of gold or silver, whatever, and take it because it was money and they were allowed to do whatever they wanted to. And so in that case, they would just terrorize anyone that they came across from. So he goes to Atlanta in Georgia, burns Atlanta to the ground. As I said before, burn all the factories, destroy crops, destroy railroad lines, destroy telegraph lines. Whatever you see, destroy it. That's what Sherman is going to do. And the idea of this war of terror, or this idea of it, was basically what is said is to make the South sick of war. So Grant's real idea was, hey, I want to make the South so sick of war that they will never think of doing anything like this again. So we're going to make it as terrible as we can. Now, if you were in the Southern Army, if you were a Confederate soldier, and you heard that Sherman was coming towards your hometown where your family was, you would, this was really terrible. I mean, like a lot of soldiers would leave to try and go home. So it was a very effective way of fighting this war, but absolutely not, ethical, I guess. Is there ethics in war? I mean, you could make that argument if we wanted to go into that. But the way wars had been fought in the past up until this point, this would have been unacceptable behavior by one military against like civilians and people that weren't technically involved in the war. So, that being said, while that is happening in the South, Sherman goes from Atlanta, burns it to the ground, takes his troops and just marches all the way to Savannah on the coast of Georgia. This was really, before I leave this was pretty innovative, meaning like it hadn't really been done before. Most armies need what are called supply lines. If you are fighting a war, you need food and ammunition and stuff like that brought to the army. Sherman said, yo, Ulysses S. Grant, don't worry about supply lines. My people will live off the land. We'll live off what we destroy. We'll steal. Like we'll live off of the stuff we take. I don't need supply lines. Don't worry about me. Just let me go. And Grant's like, okay. And that's what Sherman does. He goes all the way from Atlanta to Savannah across the state, cutting like a 60-mile wide just destruction path through the state. And it is making the South sick of this war. Now, back to the first part. While that is happening, Ulysses S. Grant is chasing Robert E. Lee, chasing him, fight him. Lee would stop him. Ulysses S. Grant would be like, attack from that side. Lee would stop him. Grant would say, attack from that side. Doesn't matter. Basically, if they were talking, Grant would just be saying to him, I'm not going to stop. I am not going to stop. I have more men. I have more troops. I have more stuff. I'm just going to keep attacking. If you kill 1,000 men, I'm going to replace it with 2,000 men that we have in the draft from the north. It does not matter what you do, Robert E. Lee. I am going to continue to chase you and fight you every single opportunity I have. Meanwhile, Sherman is in the South. So it is not looking good once we get Grant into the military, once we get him in charge, which is happening in 1863. 1864 is when, just to give you a date, we're looking at this stuff happening that I'm talking about. I'll do a little date because we want to talk about this. 1864 is just because we do want to hit our dates. What we're talking about, and then once we get to 1865 through this, give myself a little bit of leeway here. In 1865, we're going to see Appomattox Courthouse. So just like a year later, after this begins, we're going to see Appomattox Courthouse. Now, Appomattox Courthouse is a place, and this is the place where eventually you are going to see Robert E. Lee surrender to Grant. So, Robert E. Lee knew the writing was on the wall. He could not keep this up. This was not going well. Why prolong it? Why keep fighting? More people are going to die. We're not going to win. We've tried to attack the North. It didn't work. The North has just more supplies, more stuff, more everything. They just have more. It's not going to work. So Lee surrenders to Grant. The two men meet. They discuss the terms of surrender. Robert E. Lee says, all right, that's it. He gets on his horse, and the two armies split, go their separate ways. And Robert E. Lee, basically surrenders, ending the war in 1865, which is fantastic for the country. Everyone is excited that this is finally over. The next steps are going to get a little crazy because think about this: how do you bring the country back together? The South had split from the country. Now they've been defeated. We had total war done. How do you bring this? How do you put the country back together? And that's the job of one man. Well, not his only one person. He would have people working with him, but Lincoln's the president, right? So, Appomattox Courthouse. Here is the only hiccup with that plan. 5 days later, Abraham Lincoln is assassinated. Abraham Lincoln, 5 days later. Here's our unhappy dead face. It's not good. Lincoln leads the country through this entire conflict. He had visions of being lenient towards the South, trying to put the country back together. He had ideas of how he wanted to do it. He would never get a chance to do so because of this man, John Wilkes Booth. John Wilkes Booth was, oddly enough, pretty famous. His brother was more famous, but he was famous. He was a famous actor, or thespian, if you will. Thespian is someone who performs on stage. John Wilkes Booth was a famous actor. People knew who John Wilkes Booth was. So it'd be like if you woke up and were like, hey, this famous person assassinated the President of the United States. Like, it would be like kind of a mind-blowing thing for the people. He was a Southern sympathizer. He wanted the war to continue. He put a plot in place with other people, and Lincoln was going to be assassinated by John Wilkes Booth. Sometimes I do ask this question: where did this take place? Where equals Ford's Theater. Ford's Theater is, so basically the story, if you do not know what happens, Abraham Lincoln is pleased. The war is over. He is going to go see a play at Ford's Theater. He goes to see the play. He is sitting in a box. John Wilkes Booth comes into his box from behind with a gun, shoots Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln is going to die within 12 hours of that, I believe. He was not going to live. He happened to be alive, but he was shot in the head. It was very unfortunate. And then John Wilkes Booth tries to get away. He is captured. He is killed in his escape. About, I don't even know how many days later. It wasn't long. It was like he was still in the act of trying to escape. So I would just to give you an idea, I'm talking about a few days, maybe 3, maybe 4 days after this. He's surrounded, and people take shots at him, and he ends up being killed as well. But that is what happens in the assassination. At the end of the day, the important thing about it is that Abraham Lincoln is no longer living. Abraham Lincoln is no longer the president. Abraham Lincoln is no longer able to put the country together in the ways that he wants to do that. So what's going to happen? That's what we're going to look at next time. This is a lot today. End of the war and the surrender, the assassination of Abraham Lincoln by John Wilkes Booth. Where was it? At Ford's Theater, just in case I ask you on a quiz. But who's next? Who's going to be the president next? What are the ideas? How do people feel about the South? How do we bring them back in to the country? Those are all questions that we will have, and we'll take a look at next class. But we would like to move forward from this horrible, time in American history where we basically we went to war with each other. So on that note, turn these in today, your notes, and I will see you next class, and we'll keep it going. All right.